Before this starts, I'd actually like to say a quick little message about the story. It was a fun little project, and I really enjoyed working on it, even if it took a couple rewrites and a couple days. But I'm pretty happy with how it came out, and it took a couple showers to imagine where I wanted the story to end and what to do and where to go with it and whatever, the whole writing process. But ultimately, I'm really happy with how it came out, and I hope you're happy with how it came out, because I really tried my best. So this is like my best, absolutely best writing here. And yeah, I keep my word. So you know who you are, and sit back, relax, and grab a snack because this is the long night. The deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. Or is it more accurately, the deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more pain you can withstand? Nonetheless, it's one of many quotes she tried to reflect on her own life, but it didn't seem very practical. It seemed to her the quote was attempting to make a realization, one which simply wasn't accurate, or at least not certain. The only thing that was certain to her was the monotony of routine. It was the only consistent aspect that she had come to know. The perennial drowsiness that always welcomed her in the morning, a friend that begged her to return to her companions in her lucid slumber, a choice that ultimately was not hers thanks to the unruliness of existence. Whether it came in the form of unintelligible banter downstairs or the same intrusive thumps on her door, she was always reminded that she was not alone. That catharsis could not be granted to her anyways, a gift bestowed upon by her mind. The mind that ran rampant, with emotions that she fruitlessly attempted to deconstruct long ago. They begged to be heard, to be rationalized, to be freed of the cage that had been overflowing with its exoticness. She wondered if the slightest transparency would only serve to aid in her reclusiveness. The idea of self-expression was always a precarious ordeal, one that her father clearly outlined to her. She had promised herself she would never allow herself to be hurt like that again, especially not by him nor anyone else. Yet as much as she prided herself in existing as nothing more than an unavoidable minor nuisance up until this point, she had always wondered if the trust she placed in the boy was another fallacy of hers, another mistake she was destined to make. Had she bothered him like the others? It seemed most obvious. Her disorderly imaginations and beliefs would make anyone turn the other shoulder. But he listened, a foreign act that was the only thing more delightful than the laughs they shared. No. By now, the only thing illuminating her bare room was a faint glimmer of moonlight, tauntingly like a poppy growing amongst the battlefield, a mellow symbol amongst the slaughter. The moonshine reminded her of her desire for warmth. It was always the witching hour when she coveted it the most. A warmth she desperately clung onto when discovered, but always found a way to elude her. A cub yearning for its mother. Lying in her oversized olive shirt, slightly uncomfortable, not unlike the gown she wore at the center, the only potential comfort seemed to be the screeching of her phone. The same jingle that had always rung at this hour. Not today. What if the call were to never return? What if it was urgent? Was this the escape she'd asked for? She checked her phone to identify her persistent caller. To her utter surprise, it was the boy. She thought he had forgotten her as most others had. Contemplation had led her to the conclusion that this potential moment of respite would only cause that agonizing craving for company to return. She didn't care. Why are you... She couldn't even attempt to rationalize further the reason for this call before his sorrowful declaration permeated the room, like a reluctant doctor delivering the terminal diagnosis. It's time. I'm sorry. In the background of the voice, she could quietly hear what sounded like multiple people uttering amongst themselves, accompanied by a faint but consistent beep of some sort of machine. She hung up. She set the phone beside her bed and pulled the cover over her frail body and became enveloped by the softness of her cushion. She began to wonder about the boy, the real boy, and how he was doing. Perhaps he was the little light to guide her way. She tried in vain to recall their last interaction, but she could only think of her father. Maybe she was right about the many times she tried to convince him that he was wrong. As the familiar sluggishness overcame her once again, this time she smiled. She felt warm. Her eyes shut like the blinds of a lethargic homestead as the phone roared violently once again. But this time, the jingle was disregarded in favor of a whisper, close but far, almost familiar, providing solace, assuring the babe that it was okay to pass into the long night.